must unite what has been set asunder.
We are TFR. Truth Frequency Radio.
I've been a participant in some of the most insidious lies and witness to deeds that no crazed man can imagine. I spent years watching you from my lofty position to know that you were the one I could trust.
And why did you lie to me?
There still exists some secrets which should remain secret. Truths that people are just not ready to know.
Who are you to decide that?
The world's reaction to such knowledge would be far too dangerous.
Dangerous? You mean in the sense of outrage? Like the reaction to the Kennedy assassination, or MIAs, or radiation experiments on terminal patients. Watergate, Iran-Contra, Roswell, the Tuskegee experiments. Where will it end?
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth! Get out!
For what? You'll kill me?
Always remember, dissension's the greatest form of patriotism.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies.
We have before us the opportunity to forge a new world order.
Yes, we can. If you think.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories.
The lies most convincingly hidden between two truths.
I guess it won't end.
No! I don't have time for this. This is about saving the future of humanity.
We know things are bad, worse than bad. We know the air is unfit to breathe and our food is unfit to eat. I don't want you to protest. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the crime in the street. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad.
The line must be drawn here. This far, no farther.
I want you to get up right now. Go to your windows, open them, and stick your head out and yell, I'm a human being. My life has value, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
You shall not pass!
You're listening to the Revolutionary Radio Project with your host, Rob Skiba.
Hello and welcome to the Revolutionary Radio Project. I am your host, Rob Skiba, and you know what that intro means. Anytime I play that intro, it means we're going to talk about some sort of conspiracy. And every time I listen to that intro and what's being said in it, the more it's sort of driving the point home for me that there are a lot of conspiracies out there. And you got people like Bush saying we should never tolerate these things. Well, that's because they don't want them to be to expose what's really going on. And the topic of conversation that we're going to have tonight is going to revolve around two potentially huge conspiracies. One being that of the potential that we could be living on a flat Earth. Now, a lot of people think that's completely absurd, totally ridiculous, and why in the world are we even talking about that? And I've asked myself that question many times myself, to be honest with you. And many of you know, back in October, I said, all right, I spent 6 months looking into this, very interested, compelling, stuff to look into, but I'm done. I've got other work I got to do. Well, shortly after that, after I said, okay, I'm done, I'm not going to do this anymore, I got other work, and I'm going to move on and, do this other stuff on my, my to-do list is getting so big that I can never die. I've got too much to do. And it was maybe a week, if that, after I said, okay, it's time to move on. I got this package in the mail, and I'm I'm so busy. I've got so much to do, and I get a lot of letters. I get a lot of emails and stuff. If it's over a page in length, I typically will put it in the I'll get to it later pile, which I almost never get to. Well, this guy called me, happened to catch me at an opportune time when I'm in the car, and that's the only time I take or make phone calls is when I'm driving 15 minutes to my office and 15 minutes home. And this guy caught me, and he started telling me about this guy. The name sounded familiar, but I couldn't put it together, and it turned out to be the name of the guy who sent me this really thick package in the mail. And his name is Andrew Hoy. He says, "You have got to check out that package. I'm telling you right now, you've got to look into this." I say, "All right, fine." So when I got home, I did open up the package. I read the one-page cover letter, and this guy caught my attention. And I opened up the rest of the package and looked through all these blueprints and things that he gave me regarding the tabernacle in the wilderness that the Israelites built. And those of you who have been following our Torah study videos that I've been posting, they're video versions of the audio teachings I did back in 2013 and 14. This last Torah portion was dealing with the command to build a tabernacle and the Ark of the Covenant and all that stuff. And you kept seeing in the text where it said, you're being shown basically a blueprint of something here in heaven. I'm showing you, Moses, that you've got to replicate on the earth. And Andrew Hoy had spent a number of years studying Hebrew and studying the tabernacle and spent time in Israel. And he came to the conclusion that if you take the position of being a biblical literalist, which I have certainly tried to do myself, which got me in trouble in this whole flat earth thing, because if you take the Bible literally, that's what you end up with. He was looking at the blueprint that Moses was given, and the Torah specifically says don't add to it and do not subtract from it. So Moses is given a blueprint and a shopping list of items that he's to pass off to this guy Bezalel, and Oholiab, I think was the other guy's name. And these guys are supposed to build this according to the specs that were given to Moses after being shown something in heaven. And what this guy, Andrew, realized, as he and his father, I guess, have a structural engineering background, is that one of the least supported structures you could possibly build, especially mobile, in the wilderness, certainly, would be a box or a rectangle, which is what everybody's always seen the tabernacle described as. And he realized that the reason why everybody comes to this conclusion regarding the tabernacle is if you look at the curtains and the way the curtains are described, it says connect them at the ends. Well, everybody assumes that you're connecting them at the long end. It's sort of a long rectangular band of cloth, and everybody's connecting them at the long ends, and that's what you end up with as a box. But in order to keep that box supported, you've got to add a whole bunch of things to the shopping list that were not in the original itemized list that Moses was given. You have to add extra rope, extra pegs, extra poles, all kinds of stuff to keep that thing steady and standing firmly. And so Andrew thought, well, what if I turn these and connect the curtains at the short end? And when he did that, he ended up with a big circle with a dome-shaped tent over it. And he wasn't a flat earther. He wasn't looking at a flat earth or any of that stuff. It was like the farthest thing from his mind. When he was just coming to these conclusions, looking at the text and being a structural engineer and taking the Bible literally and sticking to the itemized list, he's like, well, this is what you end up with. And as I understand it, he's kept trying, because it dealt with pi and everything, so he kept trying to use the globe to support what he was doing. But when he was looking for images of the earth that he could use without getting into copyright issues, he kept finding things like composite and all these 3D rendering type language that you always read about in the fine print when you look at the NASA images of the earth. And eventually that led him to my research and saw that I'm also trying to take the Bible literally, and he said, hey, I think we need to talk. And we did, and I've had him on my show before, and it was a very interesting conversation. And that has been sort of the way it has gone since October. Since October, everything I've tried to do to get off of this subject, I just keep being pulled back into it. So finally, I just yielded just recently. I said, all right, Lord, I'll embrace the madness. If this is the path I'm supposed to be on for however long, I will do what I can to still get these other things done on my to-do list. But in the meantime, I'm still going to engage in conversation whenever it presents itself. And such a conversation has presented itself this evening as a result of seeing a documentary recently called The Global Lie, Flat Earth Revelation by Robbie Davidson. And he's my guest tonight. I don't have a bio really for him to introduce him with, so I'm just going to go ahead and say, Robbie, are you there, sir?
I'm here, and thank you very much for having me on, Rob. I've been a huge fan of your work. I think even just going back into the Fallen Angels and the Genesis 6 account, and then into your, recent revelation and, research on, what we're on and what is truth. And that whole journey, with testingtheglobe.com has been just an invaluable resource for myself and countless others. And you, among other people, in biblical research and just looking for truth, it's been such a blessing. So thank you very much for having me on, and I really appreciate being here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And the other thing we're going to talk about, maybe later in the broadcast or maybe throughout the broadcast, we'll see how it goes, is what could be another conspiracy. And I know this is something near and dear to your heart as well, and that being the what is put forward in the documentary, The Principle, which basically demolishes the Copernican principle, which all of our modern science is based on. So we've got a lot to talk about tonight, but let's start with talking about you. Tell us a little bit more about yourself. What's your background?
Well, my background is I was raised, I wouldn't say in a Christian household. I mean, we went to church maybe Christmas, Easter, that type of household. And, I lived a pretty wild lifestyle and, sex, drugs, rock and roll, and up until the age of 21. And then God miraculously, transformed and changed my life. And from that point on, I went off to Bible college and I just got deep into the Word and led me into ministries. I did prison ministry and I did youth ministry for a while, worked in the inner city and just all sorts of things. And my quest for truth and what was, why, it was more the why. So it led me to, investigating, all the world religions, and then getting into the cult, and then getting into the occult and understanding all of that. And then which led me into really looking at the world and finding out that, okay, Satan is the god of this world, and then seeing the spiritual ties and what was happening, with governments and with a lot of the events that were happening. And I mean, I think 9/11 was a huge wake-up call for a lot of people, looking into the truth. And while, I don't know if we'll ever 100% know exactly, but I think a lot of us investigating into, these stories, we know that the official story, there's major holes and there's a lot of falsehoods there. So, continuing on with that and then just seeing the spiritual ties of Luciferianism and the bloodlines and getting into like the Illuminati or, Bohemian Grove or, getting into all these things I was always fascinated with and, looking at that. And then obviously, getting into the great creation ministries like, Ken Ham or Kent Hovind. I mean, for years and years, those were just so superb. I had the opportunity to meet Kent when he came to my church probably about 15, 16 years ago. Went through the seminar, and like you, I was just on fire because here was the first time that not only could we say, no, I don't believe in evolution, it was like here was real science giving us, that foundation, but also that confidence that we could rest. We could literally go into a debate and not look like, idiots. We literally had verifiable scientific proof, for, what we're talking about. And while, they spout all these things as theories, the theory of evolution, there were major problems with it. So, continuing on with that, I really got in depth with the creation versus evolution and finding all of this information and stacking it up, with all the lies that we had been taught. But going through the Bible and stuff, there was always like a problem when it came down to, the verses and when it got into the cosmology. And, there really wasn't any resources. And again, we will talk more about The Principle, absolutely, because there's just an incredible story there. But again, there was so much excitement when that film started going into development, because here was something that was going to completely do what these creation ministries did with the Darwinian model. With Darwin, they were literally going to take pot shots at Copernican and the whole heliocentric model. Even though this was before I was looking at the nature and the shape of the Earth, I still was excited because here we go. They lied to us about this. Now, wow, it's very possible they lied to us about everything that, we're being told about, that the sun is the center point and it's the central focus. And, we're just basically satellites orbiting the sun. So to me, I was really excited about that. But like I said, it was about 8-9 months ago when, I was reading verses in the Bible. And quite honestly, I actually came to a video on YouTube where they were making fun of, the flat earth or whatever, what the Bible describes, But I'm looking at it and I'm like, yeah, but that's what the Bible says. And I mean, if we're going to be Bible literalists and we're going to take like literal young earth or 6-day creation, or we're not going to buy into the millions and billions of years or all these sort of things, we're actually going to look at the Bible with its timeline and take that literally or at face value. Then, well, what about these other verses, these really problematic verses when it came to, like, you know, when Christ comes in the clouds, every eye will see him, or when in Daniel where the tree would grow up so high that it would be seen by every end of the earth. You know, these were really big issues on a ball, but anyway, started looking into it, and then I just started my search, and I came actually across, just like yourself, the whole Mark Sargent, Flat Earth Clues, and, you know, being kind of conspiratorial and looking into, you know, these puzzle pieces and going, well, that's really peculiar. Why is it we have no real verified photographs of the Earth from space? You know, I was always, and I always explain this to a lot of people, but I always was very skeptical. I didn't believe in the moon landing. And in my circle, people would look at me as, you know, way out there because, oh, this guy, he doesn't believe in the moon. But again, it was very easy for me to start believing in all the lies of NASA when I believed they lied about, you know, the big achievement of mankind landing on the moon. You know, how many times? 12 times there and back, 6 times or whatever. And then since then, you know, they've been, 300 miles? You know, and then they'll say, well, we don't need to go back to the moon because we've already been there. But again, no other country's been there. It's almost been 50 years. And then, you know, just lie after lie. So again, to me, when I got into this and I started researching this, this was the first time. I've always been passionate. You know, I've been outspoken when it came to, you know, what I've discovered, whether it was the lies in the world or whether it was, you know, in the spiritual, you know, when it was biblical. And I've always kind of wanted to, you know, maybe do something, but it wasn't until this, when I understood that really they have lied to us about the entire universe, that I was like, you know what, I'm putting my name out there. I'm going to set up, I'm going on YouTube, and I'm going to start putting videos. I'm going to start speaking out on this because this is such a huge, huge lie. And I look at it like everything. It's like the umbrella lie. Everything falls under that because if we don't have the Big Bang, heliocentric, Copernican universe, well, we don't have, you know, evolution. We don't have ancient aliens. We don't have, you know, global warming. There's a lot of problems. A lot of the things that they're trying to push, you know, all fall to pieces. So to me, it was just a very exciting time to say I'm going to get out there. And again, I'm like you, where I'm on the quest for truth. I mean, I'm looking at where all the evidence supports it. I'm looking at it. You know, the Bible is number one authority. It's 100% infallible. That's the way I look at it. And that's the way I'm going to take it. So, you know, as it says, you know, put your trust in God, not in man. So that's kind of what I'm doing. But I'm definitely looking at the senses that God gave us and looking and exposing the lies of what the world has taught us.
Yeah. Now, I just want to say up front here and be as clear as I possibly can be that the producers and people who are involved with the movie The Principle are not flat earthers, okay? The people who made that movie are not flat earthers. That was not their agenda. That's not what they're about. However, if what they have shown, and I believe I would just say have proven, is in fact true, that this place is not rotating, it's not spinning, it's not orbiting. This place is stationary, and it's a geocentric model as opposed to a heliocentric model. Then we basically got to start all over again anyway. I mean, we've got to scrap literally everything that we have been taught. It's all wrong, and so yeah, we're in the 21st century, but we've got to go back to ground zero, and we've got to, you know, erase the whiteboard, throw out the textbook, start over again, because everything that we are taught is based on the spinning, orbiting, heliocentric, you know, cosmological worldview. And so, you know, I think what they've done, it's a separate issue altogether. It's geocentricity versus heliocentricity, and it's a separate issue from flat Earth. However, what I think is really interesting, and why so many people who are in the flat Earth research community right now, the reason why they're latching on to The Principle is because it does such a wonderful job of obliterating mainstream science. And there's a quote, I got to see if I can pull this up here, in the movie where Michio Kaku's talking. And he says, usually in science, if we're off by a factor of 2 or a factor of 10, we call that horrible. We say something's wrong with the theory. We're off by a factor of 10. However, in cosmology, we're off by a factor of 10 to the 120th. He says this is one with 120 zeros after it. This is the largest mismatch between theory and experiment in the history of science. Now, he's admitting it. He's saying, look, we're full of crap and we know it. All of our research is garbage. This is a huge problem. We're off by a factor of 120, 10 to the factor. I mean, come on. That's just ridiculous. So, I think they're really plowing some amazing new ground, and I think, maybe there's an opportunity to sort of reach across the fence here and say, hey, listen, if we're all starting from scratch anyway, maybe there's something we both can learn from each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's kind of what I want to share, what you had mentioned with the Global Lie film that I had put out. What had happened was because I was so pro when it came down to what the principle stood for, and that documentary, I mean, is just an incredible, astonishing piece of work. And again, I had put a 1-minute clip into the documentary just when I get into tying in the whole Copernican, and seeing how basically he was going against, the whole geocentric, worldview, and he really hated Ptolemy's work, and he looked to change it. And from there, all of the sciences, if you actually look at like Darwin and everything, they all borrowed off this great grand revelation of Copernicus and what he brought to the table, and everything that we see kind of spawns from him. So I'd used kind of that clip in there. Well, the documentary was released probably about 3 weeks ago. It was rapidly growing. It was at 90,000 views in less than 2 weeks. And then I got a copyright strike. So I actually had the film removed from YouTube. So when I kind of looked into it, I saw it was the studios that brought out the principle. And, I felt really bad about it. So I sent off an email to them, and they said, well, can you send an email off here? And so I sent it off, and Rick, the president, Rick Delano, the president, had emailed me and mentioned kind of his concerns and said, look, we don't want to be associated with Flat Earth, and we think that it's going to cause real damage to our brand, because we're kind of geocentric and we're looking in these type of things, and we don't want to be associated. We actually go so far as to think that it's a psyop, and, we want people to honestly look at, our claims. The fact that is it possible that it is a psyop to bury, their astonishing new evidence supporting a geocentric cosmos? They were really kind of emphatic on that. Well, anyways, I had wrote Rick back a very lengthy email, and from the heart, I kind of said, look, I have no excuse. I apologize. I shouldn't have put it in. I should have got your permission, number one. I really didn't know their stance. I thought they would be excited, the fact that, pushing their film. But again, the connection with Flat Earth, they just really were not, happy about that at all. But anyways, Rick actually, after reading the email, he contacted me by phone, and we had a wonderful talk. And he kind of stated where they were at, but he looked at it like there's a bridge here. And I said, listen, we are not coming across trying to damage your brand. If anything, we're looking at your work and what you have produced as one of the greatest tools. I would go so far as to say, like, what they have in their arsenal is the greatest weapon, that I know of to destroy the whole Copernican heliocentric model. So I said, look, we can be allies. And he said, listen, we've, looked at it. We've kind of, gone over your email, and personally, I'm looking at it. And, would you be kind of our ambassador to reach out, and maybe we can find this bridge that we can work together as long as we're not associated with Flat Earth. And I understand that because, I mean, for years I thought, Flat Earth was ridiculous when I'd hear the term. And I think it's that term. If we would say, geocentric Earth, we're all geocentric Earthers, then I think, everything's cool. But when you use those words, Flat Earth, it's just, you get all sorts of connotations. And there's so many different models out there. So, I mean, for the sake of argument, I think that if we are sitting there saying, look, it is great for a lot of people that are very scientifically minded to watch a film like The Principle, where all of a sudden they're like, wow, really? We might be still and everything's moving around us, and that everything we've been taught is a lie. It's the same things we're trying to expose. So maybe we can kind of find that common ground. We don't have to argue about the shape of the Earth. I mean, that's really inconsequential. The big lie is not really, in my opinion, so much the shape, even though that's still, you have to go down that rabbit hole for sure. But it's the fact that they have told us that literally, contradictory terms when it comes to the Bible. The Bible is very clear. Joshua stopped the sun and the moon.
Right.
He didn't say, he didn't command the earth to stop. I mean, there is a lot of verses to support the fact. So I think it's kind of like the beginning point of this dialogue. And I think it's a wonderful thing that they've reached out. They've wanted me to kind of act as an ambassador. I reached out to you and said, listen, they're open and they really want to work, together. But they do not want to be associated with Flat Earth. So I think it's very easy for me. And I had said to them, I said, I will, like we're doing the conversation tonight, stand where, say where they stand, but also putting a disclaimer or whatever on a video if we're talking about the principle. By the way, they do not endorse, the producers do not endorse Flat Earth. But these guys are geocentric, and geocentrism, if you get into that film, it is just incredible the science they bring into to support the fact that everything we've been taught about our heliocentric Copernican model is a lie. And I think that's huge for a lot of people, just that one thing alone to start them on their quest for truth.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I just wrote a blog about it today. If people want to go to my website, robschannel.com, and in the top menu, you'll see it says blogs. Click blogs. I wrote a blog about it today called "The Principle Equals a Must-See Documentary," and I've got the trailer for it. So I'm just going to go ahead and play the audio from the trailer, and we'll come back and talk some more. First, actually, hang on, let me just check. No, oh yeah, I got time. Cool, that'll take us to the break. And we're back on the Revolutionary Radio Project. I am your host, Rob Skiba, and tonight I'm talking with my guest, Robbie Davidson. We're talking about his film, The Global Lie, Flat Earth Revelation, and we're also talking about the movie The Principle. And I apologize, before my screen hadn't refreshed, and it was deceiving me on the time that I had left, so that video got cut off, but I'd like to play it anyway, so I'm going to play it again here. It's only 2 minutes, so here's the audio from the trailer for The Principle.
Everything we think we know about our universe is wrong.
There is a crisis in cosmology.
This is the moment of truth.
All these things are rather strange, and we don't know why they're occurring right now.
We are in a special place. I do believe that the universe was created by God.
It's an exciting time for cosmology because everything has changed.
If our Earth really turns out to be special, then I would say God made a mistake.
The universe is going to eventually run out of energy and all life will die. The future looks very bleak.
It's a strange time in cosmology because we don't understand nothing. Whole universes could come from nothing.
Whoa, what is going on here?
As it turns out, nothing is almost everything.
Dark energy, as we call it, is the greatest mystery in all of creation.
Science has said you must stay over in this category here and you cannot go into the God category because that's going to destroy our science.
We have to ask Mother Nature, how do you work?
There's a shelf full of Nobel Prizes for the physicists who can unlock the secrets of dark matter.
You can go on some websites of NASA and see that they've started to take down stuff that might hint to a geocentric universe.
We may be very special, but that doesn't mean the universe was created just for us.
This idea that we're not in any special place in the universe, there's something wrong with that.
So they set up a satellite and they find out these temperature disturbances throughout the universe were all pointing to the Earth.
When I see how barren the other planets are and how bountiful the Earth is, something's different, and we're in just the right spot.
We seem to find ourselves in a part of the universe that is perfectly tuned for life.
Life is extremely rare, and that we are in fact the only life in our entire universe. Now I actually think we're very significant.
The Earth is a very special place, no two ways about it.
I just noticed something I didn't catch before. The last part of that trailer, and again, if you want to check that out, go to my website, robschannel.com, and in the main menu, you click on blogs, and the first link there, you'll see The Principle Equals a Must-See Documentary, and I've written a little bit of a editorial on it, and you can check it out there. But at the end of the video, they have an image of the Earth, and the Earth is sort of rotating there as a ball. But it's the same CG ball that like every videographer is using right now. And this is one of the things that early in my investigations that caught my eye is when I was looking at the so-called blue marbles that NASA was putting out, most notably the one when you bought an iPhone or an iPad, it was the background screen. It was by default the background screen when you bought an iPhone or iPad. And that one was from, I believe, 2002, if I'm not mistaken. Well, it has a very distinct set of cloud formations. One of them in particular is this sort of backward C with a long tail, and it's just off the coast of, I believe, either Massachusetts or maybe a little higher up, Maine, Nova Scotia area or something. But it's just off the East Coast. It's this backward C with a long tail on it. Well, and that's the same Earth that they just showed in the trailer for the principle. And I kept seeing it over and over again. I'm like, why does this look so familiar? And now that my eyes are open to it, I'm seeing it everywhere. And I just watched the last episode of The X-Files. It was out a couple days ago. And at the very end of that one, Scully and Mulder are talking, and they did a zoom out. It was like an aerial shot looking down on the two of them talking, and it does a quick zoom out up into the clouds, all the way up into space, so you can see the whole Earth. And it's the same Earth. They've got the same cloud formation. And I paused the video. I'm freaking out. We're laying in bed, and I said, "Honey, check it out. Look." And I pulled up my website, pulled up the imagery that I had of the blue marble that had that very specific cloud formation. And I showed her that picture, and I showed her the one that was paused on the TV screen from the X-Files using the same Earth. It's all fake CGI Earths that even NASA is using. That's the kind of stuff that got me into this whole flat Earth thing, is because I wanted to be an astronaut. My whole life, I was obsessed with space. Had telescopes when I was a kid, 150 power, and then I got a 300 power. I had the plates where you could look at the sun and everything. I mean, I was really into this stuff. I had this little slide wheel where I could go out at night, and depending on the time of the year, I could just dial it in what it is, and it would tell me exactly through a little window what the stars were. And I used to be able to point to them and tell them, oh, that's this and that's that. I can't do it anymore. But I was obsessed with that stuff. But then when I started to look into it, especially images of the Earth, I kept seeing CG and composite and all this other stuff saying, wait, this isn't real. And that's what hooked me initially. But then it got even worse when I decided, and this was what I should have done first, but when I consulted the scriptures. And as a Bible-believing Christian who has really built my whole ministry on saying that it is my source for truth and I can take it literally, well, when I did that, you cannot in any way get a spinning heliocentric ball. Now, I think the principle does an amazing job of showing that it isn't spinning and it's not heliocentric, but they're still depicting it as a ball. So, when it comes to scriptures, you can't get a ball out of it either. So that's how I got into it. What was, you talked about all the conspiracies and things that kind of open your mind, and I found a lot of people, sort of the gateway into this mode of thinking is waking up to 9/11. Once that sort of kicks the door open to the rabbit hole, all kinds of other things pop up. So you become open to the idea that, a lot of people are lying to us, so you don't have as much cognitive dissonance to overcome, perhaps, than others might have. But what was it specifically? What was it that hooked you into going that direction?
Like my direction with starting up my channel?
Well, all of it. What made you just dive right in to flat Earth research? Now, I have said I'm a zetetic agnostic.
Yes.
That I'm still questioning this. Now, would you say you are still questioning, or would you say you're already a convert?
Oh, no, I would say that I'd be a convert for sure. And the people have asked me, before, they're just like, if you had so much compelling evidence to support scientifically that you're wrong, are you so ingrained that you wouldn't change your stance? And I'm saying, I'm on the quest for truth. And when it comes down to, an empirical scientific, experiment, and that's the problem. I mean, they're doing all of these curvature tests all over the world. I mean, You have problems with the horizon, no matter how high you go in altitude, the horizon always stays at eye level, right? So again, I'm looking at this very critically, because I say to a lot of people, I say, don't think for 1 minute that I'm getting into flat Earth to become popular. If anything, I'm being ridiculed. I'm getting more attacked. I've never seen something that drives people so crazy as this topic. And I think it is flat Earth. I think that there's been a programming in place that, anyone that even believes that it's flat, of course they got to be the biggest morons, So I think there's been a lot of programming. So, and I know that it is what it is. But again, if we were, geocentric earthers, or we were whatever, domers or whatever, I think that's one of those things. Because I know even with the, and I'll finish the conversation when it came to the principle, when I was talking with Rick, and he was explaining these sort of things, one of his biggest issues, is, and he was saying, quite frankly, he's like, look, listen, when it comes down to the North Pole star, it cannot be seen south of the equator. And he's saying that 100% is the proof to support the fact that there's no possible way that we could be on a flat Earth. So, and I know that there's people that are looking into it, and I know that you've got some, ideas on that. But again, I think that, there's that one thing. But when you look at the stack of evidence, I mean, the 200 proofs for a flat Earth, or you just look at the mounds of stuff that's coming up. But again, in this conversation, I think that we look at the importance of the whole geocentric, universe or whatever, how that's constructed. Because again, this is where the lie is in place. And I think when you're looking at all these things and you're saying, okay, fine, why would they lie? But if you understand this is an agenda, and anything that is contradictory to, their agenda or their theories, they hide it, they make up stuff. There's no way that they can recant and go back, because everything is a part of an agenda, and that kind of stems into the big picture here. Because again, really, if you think about why, what's the purpose of lying? But the big thing is to smash the credibility of the Bible and really to create an atheistic worldview. Because when you're a speck, in some, incredible, like, galaxies among, nothingness, you're insignificant. And I think the principal has done a great job of that, saying, I am significant. And we are significant. When you look at any research, whether you look at geocentricity or you look into that the Earth is special and it's shaped, in my opinion, it is completely different from everything that we see in the sky. The idea that they made the Earth into a planet, a spinning ball like everything else up in the sky, they say, I think it just kind of made it even more insignificant, because really we are the pinnacle of God's creation, and that everything in the sky was created for us. And he says they're lights. So, I know this is getting into, what exactly are they and what are they? And we're on this quest for truth. And I think that's encouraging for anyone that's on this, is saying, look, there's agendas in place, and they have lied to us. When you uncover the fact they've lied, so like you said at the beginning of the program, I mean, we are starting from scratch. We are literally going back and we're saying, okay, we know the lies. We know that there is a very spiritual nature to this agenda that's in place, for millennia. I mean, it's been in place for centuries. I mean, Satan works very gradually. He's very patient. He works over a long period of time. It's like a gradual way, and he needs to put all these things in place to bring, and in my opinion, the great deception that's going to come into the earth that will deceive, the entire earth, if that were possible, when it comes to the elect. But so I was looking at all these things and saying that is why I created the channel Celebrate Truth on YouTube, is because, this was something that was so huge. It was bigger than even the evolutionary lie, or this was our entire existence. It was everything that we had been taught. And from an early age, we're all, we all spin that globe. We see our little solar system. We all get taught that, the sun is the focal point. And in all my research, you got Rome, you got Greece, you got Egypt. The sun has always been the focal point, and it's been a very spiritual force, giving the sun the significance. And really, I'm looking at it right now that we are in a modern scientific, heliocentric sun worship age. And really, we're no different. We are all, like, even if it's passive, we're still looking up at our solar system, and what do we see? We see the sun as the center point. It is the most significant. It has to be there. Nothing else exists without it. And, you read the Bible pretty clear, and I mean, it wasn't even created until the fourth day. The earth doesn't even need it, in the sense of that. So I just think that when you're looking at the Bible, as full authority, as the infallible word of God, but then you're also looking at real true science. I think the big thing sometimes people think with flat earth or for geocentric or whatever you want to look at is they think, oh, you guys are just anti-science. You hate science. We love science. For the most part, I don't know anyone in any of these movements that are saying we do not like science. We don't like the hijacking of science. We don't like the scientism, as people will coin. But again, it's the empirical. What true science is doing an experiment that is repeatable, testable, is observable. Multiple people can do it and come to the same conclusions. And science in the beginning was all about questioning and coming up with new things. And it's got to a point now where it's like, no, the debate's over. We've already settled it. This is exactly fact. And it's like, it's not fact. And the debate is open. And that's what's having them running scared right now.
Yeah, you really hit on a few things that I want to address, because there's a huge difference between zetetic science, which is proceeding with inquiry and investigation, as you said, empirical evidence testing, versus theoretical science, which is almost all of science today. Seems like it's all based on theory that they try to pass off as fact, and the only way they can even make their theories work. Yeah, you heard Michio Kaku. He said, we're off in cosmology. We're off by a factor of 10 with 120 zeros. Is to create all kinds of ad hoc theories like dark matter and dark, energy and all this stuff to make their theories work. But when you go out there and actually do practical experimentation And this is where I would say, if you're a Christian and you say you believe your Bible, okay, start there. Read your Bible first. Start there. But if you actually want to do some zetetic experimentation, you need to get 3 books. You need to get Zetetic Astronomy by Dr. Samuel Robotham, and that was written, was it 1865, I believe. And you need to get 100 Proofs, Earth's Not a Globe, by William Carpenter, and Terra Firma, The Earth Not a Planet, Proof from Scripture, Reason, and Fact by David Wardlaw Scott. Now, the first 2, Zetetic Astronomy and 100 Proofs, were written in the 1865 and 1885, respectively. Terra Firma was written in 1901. So even into the beginning of the 20th century, people were questioning this stuff. And when you realize people like the highly respected theologian E.W. Bullinger was a flat earther, hardcore, too. There's a guy, Kevin Hobby, I think is his name, on Facebook, who's compiled a whole list of resources and things to look into. In fact, I put that recently up on the Testing the Globe website. If you go to testingtheglobe.com, and in the main menu where it says More Resources, click on Flat Earth Books and Resources, and right under the books you'll see some additional links, and there's a link there. I've got E.W. Bullinger, highly respected biblical scholar and flat earther. See the full report by Kevin Hobby. He put together a whole PDF on it. You know, that these were men of God who in the end of the 19th century and going into the 20th century were taking a stand on the Word of God, going against the science of their day. When you're seeing the beginning of, Charles Lyell with the geologic column and Charles Darwin with evolution and Huxley and all that, they were going up against that theoretical science of their day. That's no different than going up against the Carl Sagans or, Neil deGrasse Tyson's or, Richard Dawkins of our day. The same thing. And so we're taking a stand and saying, okay, let's go out and do some solid evidence, not theoretical. Let's go out and do some experiments. And if you get the book Zetetic Astronomy, it's like 300 pages. These are all practical exercises that this guy did in the 1800s, which means we can do the same things today and do it even better with the equipment and technology that we have, and we don't have to rely on NASA, the government, or the military for the results. We can receive primary source information as opposed to secondary or third source information. And the big one for me, and I know you were talking about the producers and stuff from the principals saying, the movement of the stars in the southern hemisphere, and others will say the 24-hour sun in Antarctica is slam dunk proof against the flat Earth. No, it isn't. All you're proving is that we don't know what the sun and the stars are doing. That doesn't have anything to do with the shape of the Earth. So if we just focus on the Earth alone, the slam dunk, in my opinion, and this is one of the things that's really kind of held sway over me in the direction of the flat Earth in my research, is what you mentioned earlier. The fact, this is a fact, that you can rise up in altitude and the horizon always rises to meet eye level. I just wrote something on Facebook. I said, no diehard believer in the ball Earth can explain why the horizon always, I can't stress that enough, always rises to eye level as you go up in altitude, even well above 130,000 feet. This simply is not possible on a ball, and I would challenge anyone here to show empirical evidence. I don't want theories, ad hoc math. I don't want anything except empirical evidence, solid evidence that's provable and repeatable to dispute what I just said. Build a scientifically testable, repeatable model where you can rise up on the Y or the vertical axis and still see the horizon at eye level. I've been doing it, I'm telling you, for this last week. This is what the whole week, last week and into the last few days of this week that we just had. I've been working in 3D, trying to create a 3D model where I've got a camera set up and I've been shrinking the camera, expanding the ball, doing everything I can to try to recreate the conditions of the Earth and an observer on the Earth rising up on the Y-axis off the ball. And if you don't tilt the camera, which would be cheating, in other words, you keep the camera pointing in the X or Z axis direction, whichever way you're pointing it, and just simply rise up on the Y-axis straight up, the ball always recedes below and eventually disappears. Always. But that's not what happens. You can get in an airplane right now. Get in an airplane, fly up to 30,000 feet. That horizon is going to rise right up to your eye level. You can get send up a camera in a weather balloon to 130,000 feet, and it's going to rise with you. That is simply impossible on a ball, and yet the ball earthers would claim that ships, we know the Earth's a ball because we see ships go over the curve of the horizon. Well, okay, fine. You see a ship go over the curb, then climb up to the roof of a building, and guess what? You're going to see the ship again, but you're not going to be looking down the ball to see it. That horizon's going to rise right up to your eye level, and that ship's going to be going straight across on that flat plane.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I mean, it's a great thing about it is, they bring up the ships going over the horizon. But I mean, you just kind of set up an experiment and you wait till it disappears and you grab your cell phone and just zoom in and there's the ship again. Yeah. And then when it disappears, you just grab some high, good zoom and there's the ship again. So again, this, it was used a lot, and a lot of people will use these, as evidence that, of course, we're on a ball. But again, I mean, they're doing experiments all over the world right now based on the curvature rates. I mean, this is not our theories or our math. This is their, ball Earth math. And we're putting that into practice as far as our experimentation. I mean, there's experiments at like 90 miles. I mean, actually, interesting enough, there's a group of us here that we're going to be doing shortly here in the next few weeks, but we're going to be doing an experiment. Basically, I think it's 19 kilometers, which is about 12 miles. But based on the map, it should be 80 feet below the horizon. And this is over a lake which is frozen. So the interesting thing is we're actually going to be doing it over ice. I don't think there's been one that's done over ice. A lot of the tests are done over water because we know that water finds its level. Water is always flat. No one can find this curved water anywhere. So again, this is the thing that we're doing, and we're all on this quest for truth, and we really are trying, to use real science because, again, we're not anti-science. I mean, we are anti-scientism and theories and all of this ad hominem. But again, when it comes to, real empirical, real true science, I mean, we're not. And again, I stress that a lot to people because a lot of people just think, oh, you just think all science is wrong and, you're right. And I'm like, no, I look at science, it's an incredibly great thing. But again, when they bring in, they have all their theories, theory of gravity, theory of evolution, theory of relativity, and then when you're watching the film, The Principle, which is an excellent expose, at destroying the whole heliocentric Copernican model. But again, all of these big, and I mean big, massive gaps that they have in their theory, well, instead of recanting and going back to scratch or whatever, they just fill it with dark matter and dark energy. I mean, it's like 80%. It's like, I don't know what the percentage is, but again, they have major problems, just like they do with the missing links in evolution. Well, they're not missing links. They're massive missing gaps, like huge, chasms almost. So I just see it as constant, we're on this quest. We know for a fact, though, with all the research and everything that has been done and, looking into the Bible, it's very clear. You cannot find one verse that it spins, that it flies through space, that it does anything. If anything, you find the opposite. You find is a stationary, immovable, fixed, all of these adjectives. And it's not just one or two. It's multiple verses over and over saying that we are fixed and that everything else revolves around us.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. You mentioned something earlier also I wanted to hit on, how all the cultures, the Greeks, the Romans, Egyptians, were sun worshippers. And Israel really stood out as like a sore thumb in contrast to that, because even with the building of the tabernacle, they were to set the entrance up. The entrance of the tabernacle was to face east, which meant when they went in, they were headed west toward the Holy of Holies. So they would actually turn their back to the sun. And I was just thinking, man, that's how poetic is that? Is that God's chosen people were the ones that turned their back on the sun, and everybody else was worshiping the sun.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's exactly what everyone's doing now with, what they're being taught in school. I mean, they're basically the whole focus and everything. I mean, they say that all the stars we see are suns. I mean, they are so crazy on the sun. They've got to a point that they're just labeling everything suns. Like you just look at all the beautiful things, up in the sky, and yet the whole idea is that their model falls apart when they, without, putting these things in place. And the only way that, their answer for everything is gravity, and again, you look up gravity and it's not even scientific. I mean, they've never measured it and they've never, been able to see it or quantify it and then all of a sudden, with all this research that's coming out, like, with everything that we're learning, they're coming up with, we found gravity waves, in some black hole and some, it's just everything's all like Why aren't they finding it here? So it's just silly, and they're running scared. I mean, NASA canceling their Mars mission and talking about, taking down the ISS, and we're going to go back to the moon in 2025. I mean, they're just postponing all of this because technology, I always tell people, technology has caught up to the moon and to these places. Well, they just go further off. I mean, I was actually kind of interested when they were, all the propaganda and the movies about Mars, and we're going to Mars, and then all of a sudden they're like, yeah, we're not going to Mars anymore. Well, what happened? Yeah.
Yeah, it's just crazy what's going on right now, man. I mean, this is why I think that the principle is a good entry level for people to start breaking down their paradigms of what they think they know. Because if they watch the principle, and they do such a wonderful job of laying out the scientific facts and exposing the problems. I mean, you even got people like, the mainstream physicists saying, hey, we're off by a factor of, 120 zeros and all that. And I think, what was his name? Max Tegmark. He was a physics professor, I think, from MIT. I liked him the most in the film because he seemed the most honest. He seemed the most intellectually honest person in that worldview, is saying, hey, this is what the evidence says. I think we need to rethink it. And it's caused him to rethink some things because the Copernican model has you left. Basically, at the beginning of the movie, their documentary, they're talking over and over again about how the Copernican model makes us completely insignificant. It's Carl Sagan's insignificant pale blue dot. There's even a quote from him in the beginning, a planet of a humdrum star lost in a galaxy tucked away in some forgotten corner of the universe in which there are far more galaxies than people. Over and over and over again, we're nothing, we're worthless, we're just space junk, fortunate accidents and mutations over billions of years. But if all of that's wrong, and even if we are on a ball, if it's a stationary geocentric ball, then all of a sudden, and we're at the center of everything, then we are extremely important just in that alone. So I think it's a great introduction to breaking down the current paradigm.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And we're back on the Revolutionary Radio Project. I'm your host, Rob Skiba. For the second hour, I'm talking with my guest, Robbie Davidson, and we're talking about his quest into this whole flat Earth research, as well as we've been talking about the documentary The Principle. And right before the break, we were saying how it's a great entry level to show somebody something that will completely break down their existing paradigm. What they think they know to be true is sure to be rocked. And at that point, when you've had it all shaken and you realize, wow, pretty much everything I believed is a lie, well, then you're forced to go back to square one, start all over again. And I think the best place to start all over again is certainly, first of all, the Bible. And secondly, to get out there and start doing your own tests. I got to say, I recently bought the Nikon Coolpix 900, and this thing is amazing, man. I'll tell you what. I went to a reservoir near my house, and I'm still editing the video on it. I want to get that up hopefully soon. I just haven't had much time to work on it. But it's a good 6 miles across, and I set it up just on a really short tripod right there at the beach, right next to the water, and I can see right across the lake, no problem, to the other side. But one of the things I did notice was that, and I did it 3 different days. I did 3 different temperatures, 3 different atmospheric conditions, because I wanted to see how that would affect what I'm looking at. And what I realized is that, even at 50-degree temperatures, at that distance, when you go much beyond 5 miles, there's a lot of distortion, atmospheric distortion that you have to deal with. And everything becomes very wavy and distorted and everything. So that kind of answers the question where some people say, well, if it's flat, we should be able to see, Africa from here or whatever. Well, I mean, in theory, if we didn't have an atmosphere, yeah, you definitely would not. If you didn't have an atmosphere, not in theory, if there's no mountains in the way, you would be able to see that far. But the fact that we have an atmosphere in the way, and all kinds of atmospheric conditions with water and sun and, light refraction and all that kind of stuff, the image breaks down even with a really powerful zoom. But I was able to see one thing I saw that was it was a water tower that was 12 miles beyond the dam that I was looking at from vantage point. I was looking across the lake towards a dam. But beyond that, there's a water tower, and it was really prominent. I could see it, very clearly. I'm like, what is that? And so I went and looked on Google Earth to see what it was, and saw it was 12 miles away. So then I went to the other side of the lake where the dam was to look back toward the area where I was shooting. It was right underneath a bridge. And I could see a football stadium, the kind of the press box, the football stadium for Little Elm High School, I think it was. And that was a good 8 or so miles away. I mean, I could see everything everywhere I looked, and nothing looked like it was leaning, going away on the ball, or, everything was, other than the distortions from the atmosphere, was looking perfectly symmetrical, straight up and down, just like the Joshua Nowicki picture that he took from almost 60 miles away, which it didn't have any atmospheric distortions that I could tell. Everything was perfectly symmetrical, straight up and down buildings at almost 60 miles away. These are things that all the ballers, I don't know what else to call them, people who believe in the ball, just want to blow off. They don't want to look at it. They don't want to acknowledge it. And I'm like, look, you guys have to, this is real empirical. You could do this test yourself. Go out and check it out. And until you can figure out how you can rise off a ball and make the horizon come up with you at eye level, you don't have an argument. So let's stop yelling at each other and calling each other names, and let's get out there and start doing real tests, man.
Yeah, I mean, you're mentioning tests, and you mentioned the Coolpix P900. Well, I was able to get one myself, and actually a fellow YouTuber that I can talk more about later on the program, that we've joined forces and we've come out with a show. But he also got a Coolpix P900. So the experiment I was telling you about, I mean, we've been looking at the moon and all sorts of incredible things. But the experiment we're using, we're going to be on either side of this frozen lake with our P900. So we're really excited about the experiments that we're going to do there to see what we see. So yeah, it's incredible, and that's the thing. I mean, we're just all out there. We want to know what's true, because yeah, I mean, once you come to the understanding, biblically speaking, also, with just all the evidence, we're pointing to a stationary Earth, and that everything revolves around us. I mean, time and time again, that's just where everyone has to be rock solid. So whether they want to investigate and look into certain things, I mean, that's fine, but understand the fact that science has a real agenda, and it's one thing if we had all these really strong, Christian, at the forefront of the movement, looking at the Bible and teaching us what we're to be taught. But you have the guys that are seriously so anti-God. They're so completely, I mean, you got like Lawrence Krauss talking that if you teach your kids creationism, that's paramount to child abuse. You got Dawkins, just with the hatred. They have such a hatred towards anything God. I mean, Richard Dawkins, I think it was on Expelled, admitted, and I do have the clip in my film, The Global Lie, where he literally admits, well, okay, if there is a creator, well, he has to have come from, an evolved Darwinism, way, and, some evolved being in some part of, some galaxy that, at one point they seeded us, but again, here we go with the whole lie, but that's only possible with the Big Bang heliocentric Copernican cosmology. And again, we're fed all these things. And I think more and more people are going to believe the quote unquote experts, the ones that are telling us that it's already fact, the debate's over. And the fact is, we're finding out that no, I mean, they're just full of lies, lie after lie after lie, and they're hiding things. And, there's people that are in the science fields that are terrified about coming out with some of the things that they're finding. They're worried about losing funding. They're worried about, getting revoked from journals and their peer groups and all these sort of things. So there is a real agenda going on. And I think that while Copernican, laid the groundwork for a lot of all these sciences, Darwin, I mean, you do not come against Darwin, even though there's problems, like major issues, even with what he was addressing when he was on his deathbed. He literally went so far as to say, I don't know, But again, they've taken it and they've just run with it, and everything links together. And again, when we go back, and that's the one thing that the principle with all of us in this research, what we found out, and the beautiful thing about this is so many people, when they come to the understanding that we are special, we are significant, we are placed in a position that everything revolves around us, that we are completely unique and special, well, you come to the understanding. I mean, I don't know any atheist geocentrics or atheist flat earthers. I mean, they come to the realization there is a creator, there is an intelligent designer, this is true. And I think that's the most incredible thing about this entire movement. It's so many people are opening the Bible for the first time in this investigation. And we can get into the conspiracies, like we were talking with 9/11 or JFK or chemtrails or Sandy Hook or whatever. But again, nobody is looking into, chemtrails and saying, I'm going to open the Bible and see what they have to say about it. No, or they're not looking into JFK or 9/11 and saying, I'm going to go buy a Bible and see what it says about 9/11. But when it comes to the cosmology, when it comes to the earth and everything that we see in the sky and just our creation, everyone is running to the Bible. So I see this as a huge awakening, and there's many people that are doing so many different incredible things in this movement. And while there might be different theories here and there, the one thing that we can collectively all agree on is we are being lied to by mainstream science, and we are finding out conclusively that literally everything, is the way that the Bible has said it from day one. And if you look at them and you look at the spirituality, they hate the Bible. They want to discredit it, and I think it's done a lot of damage, because the minute you start questioning, Genesis is the foundation of the Bible, everything else is open up to interpretation. Everything else is open up to question. So to me, it was very important for Satan to rock the whole Genesis account, creation, the whole thing, and he's done a very, very good job at it. But there's, the beautiful thing is this revelation is coming, and more people are coming to the understanding that, no, we have been lied to. And there is truth, and it says, even in the Bible, test all things. And it says, even when it comes to truth, I mean, the only person ever to claim that he is the embodiment of truth and that he was truth was Jesus. In John 14:6, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. And I mean, truth is incredibly important. True worshipers will worship me in spirit and in truth. So this whole thing that we're on, and we want to know truth, God honors it, and it's accessible, and it can be found. But again, you have to take out your biases. You've got to be able to come into it with an open mind and say, okay, God, you teach me. I have been taught a lot of things by man. But again, when it comes down to it, you can't get to a point. We're all in the danger of reading the Bible with a bias, So when you actually try to remove that and say, okay, I want to read this at face value. I want to read this like a child can read it, because the Bible is very simplistic in the way, it has many different levels. But seriously, children understand the concepts of up and down. They understand. As a child, Daddy, where's heaven? And we say up. Well, where's up on a spinning ball flying through space?
Yeah, and you just hit it right there. Read it like a child. I was raised in a King James only environment, and they always taught us that the King James Bible is written in 5th grade reading level English, even though it's hard to say everything with the F's and, walketh and all that, whatever. It is written at the level that a child could come to it. And on my blog, testandglobe.com/bible.html, I put a whole bunch of scriptures there. And I said, look, just take all of your preconceived notions and put them aside, because we all come to the text with bias. Pretend you've never heard of a globe, don't know anything about a spinning ball, have never heard anything about it ever in your life, and just read these verses. And I separated them by verses that dealt with the heavens, verses that dealt with the earth, and verses that dealt with the sun, moon, and stars. And I said, just read them. Just put all your preconceived notions and biases aside and just read it and let it say what it says. You're not going to get a spinning ball out of it. A child or somebody who has never been exposed to the stuff that we've been exposed to since kindergarten, seeing the globe in the corner, somebody coming fresh to the text would never get a spinning heliocentric or even a ball, I would say, out of the text. You're going to end up with a circular, still flat earth set on pillars under a dome, within which, or let's say under a firmament. Some people get all wrapped around the axle about the word dome, but I just posted something on Facebook just recently from somebody had sent me something of megalithic symbols from megalithic art, Irish symbols from ancient megalithic structures, what it was. And there's an article, and I put a link there. People can check it out. Megalithic art, and they had a symbol there for the firmament. And guess what? It's a dome. The ancients had this idea of the firmament as a dome, but what got me when I looked at the text and just put all my bias aside and read it anew, I didn't get very far, and that I saw that it says he put the sun, moon, and stars in the firmament. And I can't tell you how many times I have written about that, have taught it. I used to teach creation science using a lot of the materials from Kent Hovind and others that I would incorporate into my teachings. And that was the whole idea that the Earth was originally surrounded by a canopy of ice, like a ice canopy. That was the firmament. And that got broken up at the flood. Well, no. In Genesis 1, it tells you point blank that the sun, moon, and stars on day 4 were placed in the firmament. So I'm like, oh, that can't be. I got to look up so I looked up all the other English translations and stuff, and pretty much everybody was saying in. So I looked up the Hebrew, and forgive me if I pronounce this wrong, but I think it's barakia. It has a bait before the word rakia. The letter bait, when a bait is used in front of a word as a prefix, it's a preposition. It means in. It's in. So the sun, moon, and stars are in. Then you can't put them outside and all around the firmament like Kent Hovind and Carl Baugh and myself and others have done when they teach creation science. And so that really, we've got to get honest and come back to this stuff as a child if we want to be teachable.
Yeah, it was even this Isaiah, the famous verse that everyone uses, including myself. I would say over and over and over again, Isaiah 40:22, right? And, you'd say it, sits, above the circle of the earth, and you'd say, hey, here's all the proof. But when you go on to that verse, you look at it, and he stretched out the heavens like a tent, to dwell in. He looks down, and we're like grasshoppers. So to me, it was really interesting. And I mean, the compelling, it wasn't that, Baal was used in, Jeremiah, or it was in Revelation. It was in the same book. Isaiah, a few chapters back, Isaiah 26:18, he says, sorry?
22:18.
22:18, he says, I'll throw, you out like a ball. And then, like you've illustrated really well, do a Google search for ball, do a Google search for circle, right? But again, it's very interesting. They had the word for ball. They had the Hebrew word for sphere. It was not used. I mean, you get into the verses about he inscribed a circle into the face of the deep, right? He's inscribing something into something. So when you're looking at these texts honestly, and you're looking at it and you're just saying, okay, I'm going to take them at face value. I'm going to understand this. It's so clear. Now, I always say this. I say, because Job, I think, is a really good illustration when it says, who can measure the breadth of the earth? And, he's sitting there rebuking and talking to Job, and he's saying, who of you can see the pillars that the earth, sits upon? And all of these things. There's certain things that no one ever will find out. And to me, that's fine. We will find out truths and stuff, but there will be things that are so majestic, so beyond our realm of understanding, because God created it. God is so above our level of understanding that there'll be certain things in place, like, for example, the way the sun moves. You think we might fully ever figure it out? Maybe not. Maybe we will. But when it comes down to it, I sincerely believe this, that I don't believe that we will ever be able to get high enough, and we will never be able to fully measure and map the earth, because I take Job really seriously when he says, who of you? Like, who of you are going to say that you can measure the breadth of the earth? But here you have science saying, we know how much it weighs, we know how big it is, we know, not only that, we know all the weights and masses of all the planets, and, and again, you get into this, and it's such almost arrogance. It's almost like, taking God out in the way, saying that you can just understand all of this. But again, there's a lot of questions. And we're all in that pursuit for truth. But when it comes to anyone sincerely looking into the Bible and saying, okay, here we go. And over again, you find a stationary, immovable, fixed earth. You find everything placed in the firmament, that basically the sun, the moon, and the stars all have their orbits, and they do move. There's multiple verses talking about the sun moving, but no, of course not. Copernicus couldn't have that. He's got to be like, nope, the sun is the center point, and everything orbits around it, and it's the big deal here. And again, it's just destroying the credibility of the Bible, because you find verses when it talks about clearly the sun moving. Well, the minute science teaches you that it doesn't, well, the Bible was wrong here. So, yeah, it could be wrong over here. And what the heck do we trust when all of a sudden we find errors? But the errors, when you find out, they weren't errors. They were man's theories. They were people that were coming opposed to the church, to the truth, to the Bible, to God. And they've deceived everyone in really finding out the truth. So that, to me, is incredibly important when it comes to the Bible, when it comes to the quest for truth, is you have to go back to the beginning and saying, look, I've got to figure this out, because these guys clearly have an agenda mapped out. You can see it in their interviews. And again, you can see the amount of attacks that come for anyone that would even dare question their theories.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you pointed out, it is interesting because on the one hand, you got Christians getting all up in arms and saying, "What are you doing? You're going to push people away, and you're going to make people think that we're all crazy and the Bible's a bunch of fairy tales, and you're being just like the atheists." And I'm like, well, that's funny because I'm having the exact opposite reaction. I can't tell you how many. I'm not kidding when I say this. Weekly, I'm getting just flooded with emails and phone calls and Facebook messages and handwritten letters. I get quite a few handwritten letters sent to me, testimonials of people saying that, if they were Christians and they hadn't read their Bible in 20 years, they're picking it up again for the first time. I had a conversation with an atheist, former atheist, just this afternoon, too long before we started this broadcast. He was telling me that, before all this, he would never have picked up a Bible, and he was a militant atheist. And now he's reading his Bible. And, I'm having the exact opposite. I don't know what people are thinking, when they're saying, you don't be talking about it. You're going to push people away, and you're going to think about no. And God says that His word will not return void. So if whatever we're doing is getting people to open that book, well, then the Holy Spirit takes over from there. 1 John 2 says you have no need of a teacher. The Holy Spirit's going to be your teacher. So, if I can get them in the book, then the Holy Spirit's going to take over from there. So I'm telling you, I'm having the exact opposite response that from Pastor Stephen Anderson went out there talking about that I'm evil, I'm deceiving people and blah 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 and turning people away from the Bible. Well, I put a whole testimonial page together on my website, testandglobe.com. There's a whole testimonial page just from the first month, maybe month and a half of my investigation. It would take me forever to keep up with it, so I just put that up there, and there's plenty there for people to read just from that first month of fruit that fell into my basket as a result of looking at this. So that's been my experience. What has your experience been with what we're talking about here? Especially, how has your family and friends and church people responded to you looking into this?
Well, I'll first touch on the people. I mean, I've been having the same response. I've been having emails. I've been having talks with people that have never even read a Bible. Just unbelievable stories. I mean, people that had kind of drifted away and they're just completely rejuvenated. But the amount of people that are literally turning to the Bible for the first time is so encouraging. I mean, I've had the opportunity to talk and to witness to people, and really my heart has always been about sharing the gospel. And I haven't seen something come around that has opened people up so much that they're so receptive, saying, give it to me, tell me everything, because I already know that it exists. I've opened the Bible. I've looked into this stuff and I've looked into it. Now, tell me, what should I do? Where should I go? What should I read? So to me, it's very encouraging. I mean, like, you have even people within the movement that are doing shows like Patricia Steer with Flat Earth and Other Hot Potatoes, or Mark Sargent with Strange World. I mean, these people literally, when all of a sudden they came into the understanding that they had been lied to, they start buying Bibles. They start getting into the Bible and start recommending people. If anything, I mean, there's so many people within even this movement. A lot of people may say, oh, well, this is only a bunch of dumb Christians. Well, there's people from every walk, from every belief system that are coming to the knowledge about our, geocentric, existence, and all the lies that science has taught us. So it's been extraordinary. I mean, even personally, my wife literally accepted it within like 1 minute. She's just like, yeah, the Bible says it, therefore it's true. End of story, right? So not everyone, has that amount. I mean, even for me, seeing, hearing about it, throughout the years, I'm like, oh, what a bunch of morons. Or I'd see a video and I'd be like, whoa, those guys are way out to lunch. So I understand when people, they like, for example, you mentioned Pastor Anderson, or anybody that's just like, no way do we want association with that, or no way are we going to even devote any energy or time into something so ridiculous. Because at first, when you hear it, we've just been programmed just to completely shut down. And, that's the biggest issue here. So, you have the patience, you have the grace to understand that people are on their journey, and it might take them a long time. They might not ever. But again, we're all in this together to kind of expose the lies and to really find the truth, what the Bible had to say, and all these people coming forward to verify the truth of the Bible, and it's there over and over again. I mean, I've had about 4 conversations with my pastor, and it's been extraordinary. I mean, he says, look, I'm open. I mean, you're bringing up some very, very compelling arguments. And at first, I thought it was kind of out there, and certain people in the church are starting to watch my videos. There's some people obviously think that, I'm crazy, but there's a lot of people saying, you know what, I started looking into this. and it's not conclusive for me, but, I'm on that journey. But, this is something I never really thought. And these are the people that are, 6-day creationists. They already believed in the lies of evolution. But when you take and they have the understanding, like, listen, where did evolution come from? Like, you only have an evolutionary model with the Big Bang, heliocentric, Copernican, principle. All of that stuff, if you understand everything that they've kind of developed, it all ties together. So when you get them looking at that, they start getting a little bit open-minded. And again, I always say this. You can approach it 3 ways when you bring up this topic. Is you can, if they're a Bible believer, like a literalist, or they take it, they say, no, it's the infallible word of God, and, I believe that 100%. Okay, well, then you can hit them with the Bible. But then you can also go to, like, the truthers or the conspiracy theorists. They're all trying to look for some hidden agenda. Hit them on the conspiratorial angle. Or the third, the real scientific-minded, the ones that really want to know scientifically that what's something that's proven empirically, that it's demonstratable, that they can do an experiment that will give us reality. So that's the beautiful thing about it. You got 3 different ways to approach people. And over time, I've just figured out there's certain ways to approach people. And, for me, for the longest time, like I mentioned at the beginning of the broadcast, that the moon landing was always a big one. And I still think for a lot of people, it's kind of that one thing. If you can kind of break down that, or even get them to question the fact that, it's kind of suspicious. They've never been back. Or maybe I'll look into the evidence. And if they have not been to the moon, where have they been? How far have they gone? And the question is, if you get into the whole, the biblical, the firmament and all of this, did God design it that we can't even get up that high to see the entire thing? To me, if you look at all the evidence with NASA and all of the lies, and if we can just, soar around the universe and we can go to, they would have a moon base by now. They would have a camera. They'd have an HD camera that you could have you could go to your computer and you could watch the spinning ball, 24/7. And they don't even have a good even system with the ISS. Half the time it's offline and they say, well, we're on this side of the earth and it's cutting out. And you got all these crazy theories. Like they're sending pictures back from Mars 140 million miles away. What kind of Wi-Fi is that? How is this possible? And we just start using our head and going, well, wait a minute. They're saying this, but come on, logically speaking, is this even possible? So I really think that the moon landing from a conspiratorial or someone that's like a truther, it's like if they can get to questioning the moon, then they can start questioning everything else and saying, well, okay, I'm open-minded. And when it comes to the Bible, if they're really going to be sincere and look at the text and not hold on to their ball so tightly, because it seems like people just don't want to let go of that ball. They're terrified. It's almost like, when they were in the crib, they were holding on to that ball. It's like their safety blanket. And, I don't know how that's happened. Maybe because, in every classroom in kindergarten or grade 1, you had that little spinning ball. Hey, Johnny, that's where you are. And let's spin it over to Africa. And, we've all seen that. But, like Mark Sargent says all the time, how do you know, and you've said it really great in a lot of your videos is show me proof without using, the military, any government or NASA, in the sense of don't show me, fake pictures or, there's a reason why we don't have a 180 pan, from space. There's a reason why they have no actual video of the Earth spinning. We have that, time lapse of 26 hours where it's like 20 frames and the clouds don't move over 24 hours. Well, we know that you look up in the sky, the clouds are constantly moving. So we know that's completely bunk and that's false, right?
Hold that thought.
Sorry?
Hold it. Come back to talk. And we're back on the Revolutionary Radio Project. I'm your host, Rob Skiba, for the final half-hour segment of this broadcast. I'm talking with my guest, Robbie Davidson, the producer of the documentary The Global Lie, Flat Earth Revelation. It's the full documentary, and also we've been talking about the movie The Principle, which you can check out at theprinciplemovie.com. Where can people check your stuff out?
They can check me out on YouTube. It's Celebrate Truth as well. I've got personal YouTube channel just under Robbie Davidson. They'll be able to find me there. And I've got a Facebook page under Celebrate Truth. And at that time, that's where they can find me.
All right. Very good. Right before the break, you were talking about actually a challenge that was given to me by Mark Sargent. He said, okay, because if you listen to the first interview that I did with him, I was saying, hey, look, I very much subscribe to the Neil Adams expanding Earth theory, a globe, expanding globe. That was my thing, and I kept saying, I very much believe in this, but keep talking. You've got me intrigued. And he said, all right, that's cool. He says, look, go ahead and do the research, but know why you believe what you believe, and see if you can prove it without using NASA, the government, or the military. And that's a really heavy challenge, because if you really sit back and think about why you believe we're on a globe, ultimately the source for that reason goes back to NASA, the government, and the military. And I would extend that to the government and militaries of other countries as well, who are in line with the same. Once you realize that the whole world's a stage, and these people get together at Bilderberg meetings and Bohemian Grove meetings, and that they're all a bunch of Luciferians, working together with a plan, you quickly realize that the lie that we're told in media, as far as who's our enemy and whatnot, it's just that it's a lie, and you realize these guys definitely have an agenda, and you start looking at footage from Jet Propulsion Laboratory, JPL. I saw early on in my investigation. It was supposedly a video shot from the Galileo space probe, million or so, a few million miles away or whatever from the Earth, looking back at the Earth, doing a 25-hour time lapse of the Earth rotating. And if you watch that video, and I watched it right on the JPL website, 25 hours allegedly time lapse of the Earth moving. None of the clouds are moving in 25 hours. And I would just take your iPhone, go outside tomorrow, and if there's clouds in the sky, just point it up at the sky for a half hour. Put it up there for an hour, and then put it in your computer and speed it up. You're going to see clouds doing all kinds of stuff in less than an hour. And yet you've got stuff being put forward by NASA, the military, and the government showing the Earth rotating in 25 hours and none of the clouds are moving? Seriously? I mean, you really have to ask yourself, why do you believe what you believe? And start from there.
Yeah, I mean, and even getting into some of the numbers, I mean, you got to be kidding me. I mean, you start looking at it and they talk about, on its axis, and you look at it from, horizontal to vertical, and it's 66.6 degrees. I mean, these numbers are absolutely insane. And then you hear about the numbers about the Earth, traveling in its orbit around the sun, and it's like 660,000 miles an hour, whatever. But they love their sixes, right? And you kind of see this when you start looking into it. I mean, the Bible's very clear that 666 is the number of man. It's a system in place. And I mean, you got to be kidding me when you start looking into all these things and you see this pattern, you see this number. And I mean, that's just one little thing. But you're like, of all numbers, really 66.6
that one
degrees?
keeps coming up. The Earth is, when I first looked up the tilt of the Earth and I saw it was in multiple websites, I confirmed it through multiple sources, military, government sources, 23.4 kept coming up. And, 23.4 off of a 90 degrees straight up and down is 66.6 degrees off. And when you realize the whole theory of gravity, an apple conks Newton in the head in the year 1666, really? I mean, sooner or later, you have to step back and go, at what point do we stop saying this is coincidence?
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, and again, you start looking into the spirituality, and you look at the hatred towards the Bible and towards the church, and again, you see clearly that there is an agenda in place, and they're distorting and taking everything that's truthful about the Bible and turning it right upside down. And that's where, you literally have to start from scratch, because when all of a sudden everything that you've been taught with this agenda to go against the Bible, so that if you're going to open up the Bible and read it, really you can start, a good starting point is just try to, in your mind, conceive of the exact opposite. I'm getting to a point when it comes down to all the things that they're telling us. I'm like, well, surely, hopefully they're telling us some truth. And I'm really having a hard time finding certain, I'm having a hard time finding something that's like, yep, they're telling 100% truth there. It's like, are you kidding me? You're not just giving us, 60% lies and 40% truth. It's like, it's looking really severe, like this entire thing is a lie, but it has to be, because if you take the entire model and the foundation of, the universe, And if you start with a lie, you really can't bring truth into it anymore along the line, evolution or ancient aliens or whatever. Everything has become a lie under that massive umbrella as the granddaddy lie. So, when I came to this whole revelation, it was just, it really rocked me to the core, because I'm like, this is the biggest. In my opinion, it was like the biggest deception and lie to the whole world. And a lot of times, I'm looking at it more now that, you look into your eschatology and you look into Revelation, and there's all sorts of different theories. But again, everyone, for the most part, kind of look at the one world, the New World Order, or you look at the one world religion. And I'm starting to think that quite possibly that one world religion could possibly be science, in the sense that everyone believes it as fact. It's like Lucifer got to a certain point that he could literally deceive everyone, that it's not a belief system, it's not a religion, it definitely is a belief system, but he's basically got us to a point that it's irrefutable, it's fact, it's reality. And I think that's the biggest danger, that people are teaching this as fact, as proven, and yet a ton of it is theories. It's not proven, it's not even scientific. So, yeah, all for science, man, but it comes down to, I'm not for lies. And, you can clearly see that we've been lied to about what we're standing on, and everything we see in the sky. It's one big lie.
It's really interesting that you say that. I'm not going to mention the person's name, but there's a well-respected Hebrew scholar, doctor guy out there who got upset because I put some of his video footage into some of my footage, because everybody was saying that I was a village idiot when I was first looking into this. They started, calling me names. I'm stupid. I'm this. I'm all these names and stuff. So it's okay, fine. I'm the village idiot. Don't listen to me. Listen to this guy. And so I put a clip of him saying, hey, he's a Hebrew language expert in ancient Near Eastern cultures, one of the premier scholars on Logos Bible Software staff. And Logos Bible Software, by the way, has the integrity to show what the Hebraic cosmological worldview was. In there, this is top of the line, very expensive Bible study software tool, right? There's the Logos Bible Software. And they have a really good diagram that's being passed around all over the place. Everybody's using it. That this is the Hebrew cosmological worldview, and they shared the same cosmological worldview as the ancient Near Eastern neighbors did. Pretty much the entire ancient world had some, variation, this way or that way, but pretty much the same general concept of the circular, still flat Earth set on pillars under a dome of some sort. And he does an excellent job of saying, hey, this is what they believed. This is the way they wrote. This was the mindset that they had. But then he backpedals and says, but they didn't have a scientific worldview. So, we can't blame them. And basically, in my mind anyway, when I listen to his arguments, he just wrote off divine inspiration completely. Because Scripture tells us in a number of places that holy men of God wrote as they were inspired, that all Scripture is God-breathed, that the Holy Spirit inspired the men to write the Bible. And, he was saying that God didn't feel the need to correct them in their apparent non-scientific errors. And I'm going, why would God feel the need to correct them? He's the one that inspired them. He'd have to correct himself. If we believe in divine inspiration, unless you don't believe in divine inspiration. But it seems to me that he was holding up science as a greater God than the Holy Spirit that inspired the authors to write what we now call Scripture.
Yeah, I think the key word there is people coming to the Bible with a scientific worldview. And again, the scientific worldview, what have we been given? We've been given the Big Bang, heliocentric, Copernican, principle model. And like the principle, the documentary, it completely exposes it as a fraud. And a lot of people in this movement are, exposing it as a fraud. So again, when you're coming to the Bible with, this entire worldview, well, of course, you're going to be backpedaling and making, excuses and say, well, the Bible was written for them, not for us. It was written for them to understand it. And that's silly. The Holy Spirit inspired Bible, would be written for all men for all time.
Yeah, but that's also an interesting argument, though, because when you read the Bible, it was actually written for Hebrews, by Hebrews. In other words, it's God inspiring various prophets and disciples and apostles and whatnot to write to their people. Now Paul certainly went out and evangelized what we call the Gentile nations. So his epistles obviously are branching out. But Paul's not talking about the nature of the earth. The people who did talk about the nature of the earth were inspired by God, prophets, to write to the Hebrew people. They weren't writing to Sumeria or Babylonia or Egypt or anybody else. So the idea that they were trying to write something that would, so they could be chummy with the other guys, that they could relate to or whatever, it's ludicrous. They were writing, it was an internal memo that we happen to have the privilege of eavesdropping on.
Yeah, you brought up the fact that, all these cultures, they're all pointing to the sun, and yet, the Hebrews are actually, they have their back facing the sun. It was almost disgusting to them not to give any significance to the sun. So, again, you've got kind of a people, God's chosen people, where they were literally doing the opposite and having all their attention on Yahweh, where everyone else was kind of moving towards the sun, really. And that's the interesting thing, is what are we looking at now with our whole scientific worldview? All of our emphasis is on the sun. It doesn't even work without the sun. People will go on the record and say, well, it couldn't even exist. Nothing exists without the suns, and the big explosion, and, but just lie after lie after lie. And then when you get into the Bible and you read it, you just read it at face value. It's right there. Even just with the fascinating, revelation that the sun and the moon are two different lights. The Bible's very clear. You get into the Hebrew, you get into the King James, and it talks about, will not give off her light. The sun being masculine, the moon being feminine. And then when all of a sudden yourself and other people doing the experimentation and finding out, as kids, we would grab the sun and we grab a magnifying glass and we could burn ants or we could burn paper. Right. But people are actually, not just measuring the moonlight, they're magnifying the moonlight and making things colder. So to me, it's a fascinating thing to think about, that when you're in the sun, you're hot, you go in the shade, you're cold, you're cooler. And yet in the moonlight, it's the exact opposite. You actually are cold in the moonlight, and as you go in the shade, you warm up. Yeah. So, again, what have we been taught? The sun, the only light we're seeing is from the sun, and that's the way it is. But it has to be that way for their model. So everything, if you look into this and you come to the understanding we've been lied to about the origins or the orbit or the universe, then you have to start from scratch. But the Bible, it's right there. So if you want to start opening the Bible and at least examine the claims of what the Bible says and scientifically grab and start measuring, these light sources, and it's right there. And this is great because anybody can go out and buy one of these infrared or laser, thermometers, and everyone can go and do the empirical scientific experimentation for themselves. And that data does not lie.
Yeah, I just did it. As a matter of fact, it was last night. I went out I had done some early tests on the moonlight deal. I went out and bought one of those infrared thermometers. And if people are interested, it's called the Centech infrared thermometer, Centech, Centech. And you can get it on Amazon for $30. So I ordered it, and I got mine, and did some initial tests, and it was on pavement. I was shooting the laser on pavement and testing it, and people got all up in arms about it, saying, "Well, the pavement retains the heat from the sun, and blah blah blah, and it's not really a true test of it, and blah blah blah." So they were trying to debunk what I did. So okay, fine. So last night I had some time, and it was a nice, really bright half moon out there. So I went to Walmart and bought a one of those foam core presentation boards, kind of a trifold deal. You can open it up for presentations, and I bought it was solid white. So I bought that, and I brought it up to the roof of my parking garage here at the office where I'm at, and I just took it right out of the package, out of my car, and set it up. And I set it up at angles because it's a trifold deal, so I could kind of set it up sort of like a tent, And so I had the broad side of it facing straight up into the moonlight, and then the bottom side of it that was the bent ends forming the base for it to like the base of the tent that I had set up with it. And tested that, and sure enough, man, just taking it right out of the car, just no other than the temperature of my car, I guess, in Walmart, but bringing it up onto the roof, just setting it up and doing it live, and I videotaped this. It was, I think it was 9 degrees difference. It was 9 degrees warmer in the underside of the board, in the shadow part, than it was in the direct moonlight. It was warmer in the shadow than it is, which is the exact opposite. Like you said, in the sunlight, it's warmer in the sun and cooler in the shade. But in the moon, it's warmer in the shade and colder in the moonlight. And I'm like, this is the kind of stuff that you could go out and do yourself.
Yeah, that's the incredible thing. I mean, we've been talking about the Bible, but when you even get into extra biblical texts like the Book of Enoch that the Bible refers to, and I know that some people have a problem, with some of the extra biblical texts, but I mean, when the Holy Spirit inspired Bible is saying, is it not written in these books? We should at least look at the books as long as it doesn't contradict the overall, the Bible. We definitely should pay attention. These are significant books, significant men, like the Book of Enoch. But I mean, if you look into the cosmology in the Book of Enoch, it literally says, number one, that they're two lights, but also that they're the same size. I wonder, they just so happen to line up perfectly together. But yet, with the Copernican heliocentric model, they talk about it being, 400 times bigger and 400 times away. But again, the big thing that I'm finding is the parallels with they're millions of years in evolution, but they're billions and trillions of years in their cosmology. I mean, they mask everything in these absurd, incredible numbers. And like you brought up, I mean, when you're talking that they're off on certain things, 10 to the power of like how many zeros? I mean, this is absolutely insanity that we're buying into these, and, they're updating, their sites, or NASA's talking about that they found, matter here and stuff there. And I mean, of course, they're the authorities, they're the experts, and everyone is just listening to it and plotting and thinking it's wonderful. But again, when you start understanding, like, wait a minute, maybe possibly they could be lying about it. And again, we go back to the agenda. What is this agenda? Why is it so significant? They're on this quest for life, somewhere, in the galaxies and stuff. Because I think it's very significant. I mean, it will solidify, number one, all of their theories, because, I mean, this evolved species probably could tell us exactly, everything we want to know. But again, it just makes us, insignificant. I mean, how many Earth 2.0s have they found? All we found, and where did they find it? Oh, in, 14, trillion light years away, we found, or whatever, just absurd numbers. They're finding it, Earth 2.0. We know that life has to exist somewhere there. We haven't found it yet, but we know it exists. Come on. This is not science. This is just completely fairy tale land.
Yeah. Well, we only got about 9 minutes left, I think, of the broadcast. Where can people get a hold of you and check out your stuff? And are you going to put your video back up on YouTube?
Well, yeah, that's the exciting news. I mean, you can go to Celebrate Truth on YouTube as well. I launched a new show with the Controversy 7 called Controversial Truth. We launched episode 1 of season 1. We're going to be doing about 12 episodes for the first season, and we just kind of get into the Bible. We talk about cosmology. We talk about all these absurdities that the scientific community has been teaching us. And that's really exciting. But again, in the dialogues with the principal, and I'd mentioned earlier on that, they were really touched with the, I guess my repentant heart and asking forgiveness. And truly, I had nothing to stand on because I was in the wrong, and I totally admit that. So, went to them and I proposed certain ideas that, hey, we can work together. They were like, you know what, we're at the point now, we've come against the flat earthers and stuff, they sincerely believe that it was a psyop and it was to damage the credibility of the principle. And, as long as it's stated that, and that's what Rick, the president, said to me. He said, look, you do a video, go on, and basically state the fact that we do not believe in flat earth. We emphatically do not believe in it. I mean, they are geocentric. And I said, that's fine. I said, we're all geocentric. I mean, we can argue down the road about, the shape of the earth or whatever. But for now, let's work together because, again, you've got in your arsenal a weapon that literally, I believe, will be used for generations. I think that generations will look back at the principle and say, here was one of the groundbreaking pieces of work that really opened up the multitudes. And I know that science is coming against them, creationism, people are coming against them. I mean, a lot of people are coming against them. And really, we're the only group, these people that want to find out the true existence of, everything. We're supporting it like crazy. So again, it was almost, in our dialogue saying, look, I do not want to damage their brand. If anything, we love what you're doing. We want to work together with you. So they basically said, like, look, you go out and do this, we will get your copyright strike, turn back. We'll remove that and, have your film go up. And I mean, I'm very excited about it because, like I said, it was like at 100,000 views in less than 2 weeks. I mean, it was going everywhere. And once it gets released again, it's going to continue. And, the disclaimer will be there in the description. And I think with this broadcast and getting this information out, people will know they do not stand for flat earth. They are geocentric. And look in, again, we're all on this quest for truth, and we need to look at what they're saying. We need to look at what these people are saying. Anybody coming to the table in this quest for truth, we have to be open-minded enough to know and not get so biased that we're closed-minded. And that's the beautiful thing about you, Rob, is, and it can be sometimes kind of a little bit frustrating because you can put out such amazing material, but you're like, yep, but no, I'm not a believer yet, But it's like, here's the question I have for you, and I think I already know the answer. But while you might be like 95%, enclosed creation, whatever you want to call it, when it comes to that, you're still on the fence there. How sure are you on the geocentric?
Oh, man. First of all, I want to say that the producers and people involved with the principle have nothing to fear from the flat earthers because, like you said, we're doing nothing but pumping that film out. I mean, like, check it out. It converted me. I was already leaning in that direction because of some other things that I had read in my research prior, even before even looking into flat Earth. I'd always been intrigued by geocentricity, but doing the flat Earth research naturally pushed me towards some of the other stuff again, and that movie came out at the perfect time. Because as I was looking at that stuff, all of a sudden this movie comes out and it's available. And at first I saw a bunch of the YouTube interviews with these guys where they were being interviewed by people about the film. And then when they finally got it up for streaming and stuff, I actually watched it when I was driving out to Lubbock, Texas to do a Nephilim conference out there. And boy, if you want to become a convert to flat Earth, just go to Lubbock, Texas. I mean, it's about as flat as it can be out there. But as I was driving out there, we had the iPhone on in my car, and so I couldn't really focus on it because obviously I was driving. But listening to it and glancing over and seeing what I could, it just pushed me right over the edge, man. I'm not going to say absolutely 100%, but like 99, let's say 99.5%, because I leave that little bit of doubt and room for, I never want to say I'm completely there on anything. I want to leave room for growth and continued investigation. But yeah, I'm definitely become a convert because of that film.
Well, that's cool because, like, when I was on the phone with the principal, with Rick had said, look, listen, I'm not trying to push my worldview on you. And I said, neither am I. I mean, we're not in this to, force people or try to convert people. We're all in this just to find out what's the truth. So I really, admired that. He admired, where my stance was, because that was really where it came down to. It was like, okay, we can work together. I just wanted to know if you're open to still looking into all angles when it comes to, the truth. And I said, absolutely. Well, I said at the beginning of the program, I mean, I'm pretty rock solid, absolutely. But I'm telling you, I can never get to a point kind of like you where you don't get so biased. But at a certain point, you've got to take a stand. You've got to kind of stand on something. I already have. It might take you a little bit of time.
I'm in an interesting position because of my status as a public figure. There will be people who will believe just because I believe. They've already done it. I've received phone calls and messages from other people that are ticked off at me because their spouse or friend or somebody says that I believe in flat Earth, so they do. So I'm consciously aware of the situation that I'm in, and I don't want to ever be guilty of leading anybody astray about anything. So I'm trying to maintain, hey, I'm a zetetic agnostic. I'm an explorer. I'm on a quest for truth. I haven't arrived. I haven't figured it all out yet. I figured a lot of things out that are very interesting and intriguing to me that certainly lean in the direction of flat Earth. But there's still plenty of problems that flat earthers have to deal with. And I think some people just aren't willing to look at the evidence and say, well, okay, well, we have to deal with that. So, I just want to remain open and continue on the quest and, hopefully drag a few people along with me to continue the quest. But we got like a minute and a half left. What would you like to leave our listeners with?
Well, I'd just like to say, hey, man, anyone listening or coming, to this program, just search for the truth. Look to the Bible. Obviously, as Bible believers, looking into the Word of God, we've got to, take it, incredibly serious. And looking into that, I think is just really important. So whether it's, the principle, the same stances, they're coming at it that, really in reality, we are unique. We are special. I mean, everything that was created for us. And again, when you come into that understanding, it does change your worldview, whether you're a believer or you're not. I mean, the more evidence that supports the fact that we literally, are at the center of everything. And I think for the longest time, people were really pushed away. And I think God, if anything, was really pushed away, where it's like, well, where is he? I mean, we were talking trillions of galaxies, and he's outside of that, and he's so far away. And I mean, although God's omnipresent and omniscient and all these things, I just think when you start reading the text and you understand, like, wow, like, could it be that God literally is up? He's right up above
us, right up above us, and looking down, and that's what a lot of people have taken tremendous comfort in. Thank you so much, Robbie. Great podcast. Thank you guys for listening. Back next week on the Revolutionary Radio Podcast.